I'm against the withdrawal of this item, and I am in favour resolutely of the referendum for the following reason. Not because it's part of the democratic process. We've already seen the democratic process here at work and play. Not because of that, but because I've watched this, like Mr. Perez, over the months, not as long as him, but what I've seen, and there's been evolution in the dossier, but what I've seen is the opponents put forward arguments, valid or not. Whether or not they actually care about le patrimoine, I don't know, but they put forward arguments. They talk to the neighbors, they get the people out, they demonstrate where the community stands. Whereas the proponents, as I've heard them, just sing a repetitive song of anti-Semitism. I haven't heard one argument in favor of this project. And quite what St. Columba's Church, which the religious community is not going to occupy, has got to do with anti-Semitism, I can't imagine. Now, Mr. Perez took umbrage at the fact that I referred to the Jewish guilt approach. Well, the Jewish guilt approach we see a lot because not so often as we used to, that's when an argument is put forward without foundation, the notion being that because we said it's Jewish, you can't say anything against it. That's the whole point of the exercise. You hear about anti-Semitic. You don't hear about anti-Armenian or anti-Russian or anti. It's a role taken on by the Jewish community and used for all it can be worth. And as I say, I heard no argument in favor of this project. But to get back to Mr. Perez, who should be aware of these things, being a lawyer, when you accuse somebody of anti-Semitism, or racial whatever, but anti-Semitism in Canada, you're potentially accusing them, and these are identifiable people, either of a criminal offence under our hate crimes legislation, or of offences under Quebec or Canadian human rights legislation. These are extremely serious allegations. I hear a rabbi basically accusing the community of criminal offence, anti-Semitism. It is criminal. And I want to see the proponents actually go out in a referendum and put their money where their mouth is and see how many people they actually have supporting it, have them go door to door, have them put out arguments which compel the community to come on their side. We haven't seen that yet, have we? So I want to see the 6 votes for the proponents as opposed to the probably 1,000 votes for the opponents. And I just don't like to see this vicious smear campaign which has been presented by the proponents, allowed to get away without them having to prove it. And I hope, by the way, that there's going to be some investigation. I'd like to think that a police officer is going to call on the rabbi and ask for his proofs of anti-Semitism. And anybody else who makes these allegations, these are serious criminal allegations. And I think it's absolutely outrageous in this day, not in day and age, that's redundant, in this today, that people would try to use this in a zoning discussion, especially, as I say, when the housing element of it has absolutely nothing to do with the religious community. So I believe I'll be dissident here. I want to see the referendum go ahead, and I want to hear from the rabbi coming out and make proofs of his vicious allegations of anti-Semitism, which are so far unproved. And I might just add that somebody actually accusing the fact that it was marshmallows burning somehow entails anti-Semitism. No, it's cooking the marshmallows. And naturally, in a campaign of this sort, the opponents will use any legitimate, honest means at their disposal. And if somebody goes a little over the top, well, it cannot be compared with a rabbi accusing a whole neighborhood of hate crime. Thank you.
For your information, Mr. Searle, you use the term "I stand corrected" with great regularity at this Borough Council. I reported the incident, which was clearly anti-Semitic, to me, to the police. And so if you want an indication of anti-Semitism, I lived it at the consultation
Agreed.
Well, so you stand corrected once again.
No,
Very
I don't.
good.
You're not the rabbi here.
No,
I'm
but
referring to the rabbi.
I
Well,
lived.
This has got nothing to do with the rabbi
I will give you
and the
your.
other
I will give you your
proponents.
turn back again, Mr.
No,
Searle.
you were not one of the proponents
Mr.
of the
Searle,
project.
do
I
not
referred to the
interrupt me.
proponents.
Do not interrupt me.
Well,
I
don't
don't.
invent
I
things.
don't interrupt you.
Inventing
I'm
things is
strongly.
non-parliamentary.
I'm strongly in. I have a strong tendency to do so, which I control. I don't interrupt you. Don't interrupt me. You'll get a chance. You will get. You will
You're
get.
allowed to interrupt non-parliamentary language.
And what
You're
was non?
inventing
What,
things.
what was?
I
What was
refer
non?
to the proponents only.
I'm
You are
going to
not one of
raise
the
a
proponents
question
of the
of
project.
privilege at this point. I'd like to hear the arguments of the person who has the floor. And I would suggest to the person maintaining decorum, who happens to be the person who has the floor, if you're interrupted again, please ask the counselor to leave. He's been asked 4 times to respect the rules of decorum. We have a tendency in this council to bend over backwards to allow people to speak, even when it's marginal to the point, or speech we don't agree with, but we always respect the right to speak. You have the right to speak as much as Mr. Searle had to make his intervention, which I've personally found offensive a few minutes ago.
So I will indicate that, granted, it was one individual, and I'm not suggesting it was any more than that, but that deplorable incident at the CCU consultation, where a resident of this of NDG used the term to me, and I quote, Heil Kopman, said I was a fascist and a dictator, raised his right arm in the stiff-armed Nazi salute. There can be no other interpretation. Now, I'm not suggesting, I'm talking about one incident, and I fully recognize that. But I did what I felt compelled to do, and I reported the incident to the police. Correct. So if you want proof of that incident, it exists. It happened to me. I was the target, and I did what I considered to be appropriate, which was I reported the incident to the Service de Police de la Ville de Montréal. What they did with the complaint is entirely their affair. And so whether charges were laid, whether the individual was questioned, this is not my concern. My concern as someone who went through that, I believe I acquitted myself of my responsibilities and reported that, deplorable and hurtful incident to the police. In the same way, I objected, Mr. Searle, at the last Borough Council meeting, where you drew an analogy between certainly myself and some of my colleagues sitting at this table to camp guards. That was precisely your term. I don't think you were referring to day camp guards. Perhaps you were. But camp guards, I would say, for most people, is well understood. It's not normally day camp, summer camp guards. It's not even, you didn't even use the term prison guards. You chose to use the term camp guards. And so, as I've indicated previously, as a convert to Judaism, as one who lived roughly half my life as a Christian and a little bit more half now as a Jew, I don't feel that I have any genetic predisposition to invoking Jewish guilt, but I lived and continue to live with both feet, one foot in either community. And so I too find your comments offensive. I think you missed an excellent opportunity to say nothing.
Mr. Copeman, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Searle.
First of all, I totally agree that the incident you referred to is absolutely outrageous, but it's got nothing to do with anti-Semitism. He was accusing you of something else, which is also horribly inappropriate. Again, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe I referred to camp guard mentality, which is a phrase in common use for a certain mentality, which I will not repeat the meaning of it, because I already said it last time, but in no way it's recognized that it in no way implies that the person is being accused of being as such. We're referring to the mentality which allows people to let things go by.
Much better.
I'm calling for the vote.
Mr. Perez, go ahead.
Je vais appuyer ce dossier pour retirer pour les raisons qu'on a déjà mentionnées. Je pense que il éclaire la volonté des résidents dans ce dossier. Et donc, je ne pense pas qu'il y a vraiment des questions supplémentaires. I'm debating whether I should add any comments or to regard to Mr. Searle, because on the one hand, you don't want to encourage him and you don't want to lend credence to his comments, but I find it hard not to respond and let certain comments of his stick as if they have any kind of validity with respect to myself. The use of anti-Semitism is a very strong word. I've never used it. I've never used it in public, and I didn't do it tonight. So I don't appreciate, Mr. Searle, you attempting to say things that I didn't say. I do think it was wrong of you and inappropriate of you to accuse a citizen of using the Jewish guilt argument, as if people who experience certain things in their perception, their experiences, and their discussions, as if it invalidates it because they're simply Jewish. I think that's totally wrong and inappropriate, and that was the comment that I was saying with respect to what Mr. Atlas was saying. Nothing more and nothing less. I did not accuse anybody of anything. What I did is an explanation of my perception of things and how they evolved, nothing more, and I've never accused anybody of anti-Semitism tonight.
Mr. Searle.
Unless the record shows me wrong, I did not suggest that Lionel Perez had used the anti-Semitism phrase. I referred to persons in the audience. If I did inadvertently appear to apply it to Mr. Perez, I apologize wholly and without question. Certainly no intention whatsoever of that.
Est-ce qu'on peut voter?
Oui.
Alors, tout le monde en faveur, sauf M. Searle. C'est bien ça?
Mhm.
Exact. Alors, tout le monde en faveur, M. Searle contre.